Most of you have been here for the previous two. This is a three-part series on Hitlahavut, which is a noun. Hitlahavut is the verb. And it's for this lighting of the fire of the Spirit within us. It's a common word in the archives of Jewish Kabbalah and mysticism. And it starts to happen naturally to us, right? And I taught about the meaning of the word, of the Hebrew word, in the first session. In the second session, I talked about the teachers who have passed this concept down, the cautionary things about it. The reason why I'm teaching it is because some of you and some of my students have begun to have these experiences. So when do we have these experiences? After we've been meditating for a while and we're drilling deeply, and that klipot, that veil that hides the light from within us, begins to unfreeze and go away, right? And as that goes away, that inner light begins to shine and melts our heart. So in the word is contained the Hebrew word for heart, and it's about the heart. It's the heart chakra. It's about the heart's response. So we meditate regularly like that, and these structures and stresses and klipot, as we call it in the tradition, begins to dissolve, and then the heart begins to warm. And we can have experiences, and those experiences are subject to our own personalities, right? So some people have amazing, wild experiences, and other people have much more subtle experiences with this Hitlahavut, which is the igniting of a fire, or also ecstasy or rapture, or just unbridled enthusiasm. These are typical translations for this word, old and new, right? So as we experience these things, like any fire, we light a fire and it warms us. Up here in the Rocky Mountains, we're especially sensitive to this. We light a fire. We want to constrain the fire a little bit. We don't want to just have a wild fire, because then it turns from something good, warming us, to something terrible, creating destruction all around us, right? So we do have some ways in which we control. It's sort of like a paradox. So we have this sort of unbridled enthusiasm, but there is some control to it. And we had a great experience in our last lesson, which was 2 lessons ago, because you didn't have me last time. We had someone who talked about an experience, a Hitlahavut experience, so this can happen both in and out of meditation, because as that light grows, the light stays with us, right? So this person told us in the meditation that the leaves were changing. She was driving down this tree-lined road in Maine, which, by the way, is the most beautiful place in the world when the leaves are changing. And she was driving home, and she was overwhelmed with the oneness she experienced with the changing leaves, and she felt like she was drowning in honey, so to speak. But she had to keep her hands on the steering wheel and keep her eyes on the road, right? So that was the point of the second session. We have this experience, but we keep our hands on the steering wheel. We keep our eyes on the road. We don't let this fire become a wildfire. And the essence to that is that it remains connected. The fire remains connected to its source. And that's really the point of today's lesson. That's the whole point. Because what can happen with this enthusiasm, with this bliss, is that it can become individualized to the point where it's not connected to its source. So as we experience this warmth and this wellness, we continue to touch Ein Sof, divine, pure consciousness. And then it remains connected to its source. And it becomes only a kindness, truth, loving experience and not a destructive experience, right? So that's the difference. Always remaining with its source. So if we go back to the teaching of the Sefer Yetzirah, which is that ancient book that was handed down from generation to generation, that this meditation that we teach is based from, right? The words in the Sefer Yetzirah are breath from breath, and we experience that in our meditation. This prescribed breathing that's been given to us, handed down from generation to generation, right? Breath from breath. And then it says water from breath. And that water is that flow of consciousness, that unfrozen flow of what's called Hakma, consciousness, wisdom, right? And then fire from water. And this is the igniting of that fire as our heart begins to melt. So the experience is very easy and simple. We surrender, we do this prescribed breathing. We have this name, this holy name, and one of the names, there's 22 names in the Hebrew alphabet. They're not just letters, of course, they're actual names. So Aleph is not just a letter, it's actually a name. Aleph, Lamed, Pei, right? Aleph. So we have these divine names. They allow us to drill deep within and melt those frozen waters. So then the waters flow after the breath. And then the heart is melted. So then there's the fire. And we can experience this Hitlahavut. And this Hitlahavut, like I said, is different for all of us. Not only is it different between us, but it's different each time we experience it. It's not the same. Right? So one time it may be very subtle, one time it may be more moving. And also, it's not something that we contrive or we judge our meditation on. We can have meditations that seem without feeling or very mundane or a lot of thoughts. That's still a good meditation. And we can have meditations where we feel our heart melting and we feel this warmth. Right? So we don't judge our meditation based on that, and we don't strive or contrive this feeling. It comes naturally. It's like how a certain amount of temperature will ultimately ignite a fire. Right? So that's critical to the understanding of this. So what I thought I would do, so we have this experience, we can have it today, it can be gone for a few months, we can have it the next day, like that. We don't anticipate it, we just experience it because it's a natural result of the klipot melting and then therefore the heart melting like that. If we try to contrive it, then it's disconnected from its source and destructive. We can't hyperventilate it, we can't have a formula for it, it just happens. Okay? And it's a beautiful thing, and it's a joy that we should experience at some point in some time with regular practice. So in the Far East, this Hitlahavut is called Ananda. Ananda is, in Sanskrit, it means bliss. So the experience of the meditators in the Himalayas is they have this Ananda. It's the same thing under a different name, right? So I wanted to conclude this brief teaching with some words from the Baal Shem Tov and also some words from Anandamoya Ma. Anandamoya Ma is one of my teachers from the Far East of the Vedic tradition. Of course, I never met her. I claim her as a teacher only because I went to her ashram and I had an experience of her, even though no one was there, just me and a security guard. And I began reading her words and in her books and stuff. So just like you guys might consider Arya Kaplan a teacher, as I do, I consider her a teacher. And I want to read Ananda Moya Ma is the mother of bliss, right? So, an incredibly blissful saint from India. Same experience, Hitlahavut, Ananda. And then the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov, another one of my teachers, and I hope yours too, sort of rekindled this idea of Hitlahavut in our Semitic tradition. And I want to read a few words from a book written about him by Martin Buber. So I'll start off with Ananda Moya Ma, talking about meditating on the names, as we do, and her bliss. Through the practice of the name comes bliss, liberation, peace. All these will blossom forth. Invoke the divine by the name for as much time as you can, the longer the better. In this way, you will at some auspicious moment discover the bliss of the mind. And then you will continually hear within yourself the praises of the great Master, the Lord of creation, like the never-ceasing music of the boundless ocean. You will hear the land and sea, the air and the heavens reverberate with the song of glory. This is called the all-pervading presence of his name. And now I'll read a little from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Semitic tradition. If I can find what I wrote, or I copied here. Hitlahavut, this is liberation which is lifted above everything earthly. When man moves from strength to strength and ever upward and upward until he comes to the root of all teaching and all command, to the eye of God, the simple unity and boundlessness. When he stands there, then all the wings of commandments and law sink down and are as if destroyed. For these impulses are destroyed since he stands above it. Excuse me. This is the earthly life of Hitlahavut, which soars beyond all limits. It enlarges the soul to the all. It narrows the all to the nothing. The creation of heaven and of earth is the unfolding of something out of nothing, the descent of the higher into the lower. Hitlahavut is embracing the divine beyond time and space. Okay. So let's experience the transcendence in our meditation. And then if there's any questions, we can maybe chat about it later.